وأذن في الناس بالحج يأتوك رجالا وعلى كل ضامر يأتين من كل فج عميق.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. So far, bihamdillah, we've managed to cover the first subchapter. In it, we spoke about several masail. The first one was the definition of Hajj. Then we moved on to the ruling of Hajj and its virtue. We spoke about the ruling of additional Hajj. We spoke about the conditions by which Hajj becomes obligatory upon a person. We spoke about the ruling of performing Umrah. And the final mas'ala which we took last lesson was the mawaqit, the designated times and entry points for Hajj and Umrah. In this lesson, inshallah, we're going to begin the second subchapter, which is a short chapter, but it's actually one of the most important of the chapters in this book. Al-Babu Thani, the second subchapter, Fi Arkan al-Hajj wa Wajibatihi. Going to speak about the pillars of Hajj and the mandatory acts. So there are fihi mas'alatan. There are two issues that are going to be discussed. And also they're going to touch upon some of the sunan, some of the recommended acts as well. In this lesson, inshallah, we're going to focus on the first issue, which is speaking about the arkan. Fi arkan al-Hajj, the pillars of Hajj. This is what we're going to speak about in this lesson. Arkan al-Hajj arba'a. The pillars of Hajj are four. There's four pillars of Hajj. And as we know, the pillar is the fundamental part of something. Without the pillar, that thing would not stand. Likewise, if you miss a pillar, then the Hajj is null and void. If you miss a pillar, the Hajj is null and void. So these are things that you have to perform for your Hajj to be accepted and valid. The first pillar from the four pillars is Al-Ihram. Al-Ihram. وهو نية الحج وقصده. And it is the intention of Hajj and seeking to perform it. لأن الحج عبادة محضة. Because Hajj is an act of worship in its entirety. فلا يصح بغير نية. And it's invalid without intention بإجماع المسلمين, by consensus of all the Muslims. والأصل في ذلك قول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. And the basis of this being a pillar is the statement of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, إنما الأعمال بالنيات. Actions are merely by their intentions. وَالنِّيَّةُ مَحَلُّهَا الْقَلْبِ. And the intention is located, or its place is in the heart. لكن الأفضل في الحج النطق بها. However, it's better when performing Hajj to utter the intention. مُعَيِّنًا النُّسُكَ الَّذِي نَوَاهُ. Specifying the ritual which the person intends to perform. لِثُبُوتِ ذَلِكَ مِنْ فِعْلِهِ صلى الله عليه وسلم. As this was affirmed from the actions of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم. So we've read what the authors have to say with regards to the first pillar. The first pillar is Al-Ihram. And we mentioned previously that Ihram is a ritual state which a person has to enter before commencing Umrah and Hajj. So this is a pillar in both Umrah and Hajj. The author is saying here, it is the intention to perform Hajj and seeking to perform it, seeking it. This is not entirely correct, because entering into the state of Ihram is more than just intending to perform Hajj. A person, he intends to perform Hajj in his hometown. When you ready your funds to go and buy the tickets, you've already performed the intention for Hajj. You've made the intention for Hajj in your hometown. Does that intention now enter you into the state of Ihram? No. That intention to perform Hajj doesn't enter you into the state of Ihram. It's similar to a person who intends to pray. So for example, if I intended to pray Dhuhr now. Dhuhr has come in, I intend to pray Dhuhr, I get myself ready, I perform ablution and leave the house. Does that intention enter me into the prayer? No, it doesn't enter me into the prayer. What's going to enter me to the prayer is if I go to the masjid, line up in the rows, and then I say Allahu Akbar. I perform the first takbir, which is called takbiratul ihram, the opening takbir. And likewise, look, the same word is used here, Ihram, Takbiratul Ihram, and here we're entering into the state of Ihram. So by saying Allahu Akbar, that's what's entering me into the prayer. That's when I'm not allowed to speak, I'm not allowed to walk, talk, and do other things which are besides the prayer. Likewise, when you make the intention to perform Hajj in your hometown and you buy the tickets and ready yourself to travel, this doesn't enter you into Hajj. What enters you into Hajj is a specific intention that you make to go into the state of Ihram, where you intend to commence the rituals of Hajj. Niyatul dukhul fi nusuk, this is al-Ihram. It's the intention to commence the rites of Hajj or Umrah. That's what Ihram refers to, not the intention to perform Hajj. This is broad. This doesn't enter into the state of Ihram. The intention to commence now the acts of worship related to Hajj and Umrah, this is what we say, what's intended by Ihram. Okay, I hope that's understood. Also, just like Takbiratul Ihram, the word Ihram, and here we have Ihram, they are taken from the word haram, something becoming haram. Because when you enter into that state, when you begin praying, or when you enter into the state of Ihram here, there are certain things which prior to that they were halal for you, but after that they become haram for you. So when you say Allahu Akbar, you're not allowed to talk. Talking is generally allowed. You're allowed to talk, you're allowed to eat, you're allowed to sleep. But when you say Allahu Akbar, those things which were allowed, they're not allowed from that moment on. And likewise with Ihram, you're not allowed to use perfumes, you're not allowed to shave your head, clip your nails, wear fitted clothing, and so on, once you enter the state of Ihram. Okay, that's where the name comes from. Here the authors mention وَالنِّيَّةُ مَحَلُّهَا الْقَلْبِ, and the intention, its place is in the heart. And this is true. For every act of worship, a person, he makes his intention in his heart. And uttering the intention out loud, there is no basis for this. لكن الأفضل في الحج النطق بها. They say that it's better for a person while performing Hajj to utter the intention. This is not entirely correct, which is why Shaykh Abu Musa, he mentions a correction. He says قلت هذا غير صحيح. This is not correct. إنما النطق بالإحرام كالنطق بتكبيرة الإحرام في الصلاة. Uttering the Ihram, when you say لبيك اللهم حجا, لبيك اللهم عمرة, here I am at your service, O Allah, in order to perform Umrah or in order to perform Hajj. This utterance, this is similar to a person saying Allahu Akbar before commencing Salah. So when you commence Salah, you say Allahu Akbar. That Allahu Akbar, when you say Allahu Akbar, that's not your intention, is it? That's not professing your intention. That's a dhikr which is related to entering into the prayer. Likewise, when you say Labbaik Allahumma Umrah or Labbaik Allahumma Hajj, this is a dhikr which is related to commencing the act of worship. It's not professing your intention. Okay, it's not professing your intention. The Shaykh continues, أما قول نويت الحج أو العمرة. As for those who say, I intend to perform Hajj and Umrah, this statement فلا دليل عليه, has no evidence to prove it. وقد ذكر ابن رجب نحو هذا في جامع علوم الحكم. And Ibn Rajab, he mentioned something similar to this in his book Jami' al-Ulum al-Hikam. So there's people who use this as evidence. They say that because you utter the intention when you perform Hajj and Umrah, then you can extend that to all acts of worship. So you find them before prayer, they say Nawaitu, I intend to pray Dhuhr for Rak'ah, I intend to do this, I intend to do this. They mention intention out loud for acts of worship. Even if we was to concede that, okay, you are actually uttering your intention when you perform Hajj and Umrah out loud. If we conceded that you are actually uttering your intention, that would only mean that this is an exceptional case. It's an exceptional case. We have to limit and restrict it to this case, this exceptional case. We can't extend and apply it to every other act of worship when there's no proof for other acts of worship. We have to restrict it to this. So there's no evidence for them to extend it and apply it with other acts of worship. Okay. مُعَيِّنًا النُّسُكَ الَّذِي نَوَى. This part here, when you specify the type of nusuk, the type of ritual you intend to perform, what they're referring to is when a person, he enters into the state of Ihram, الدخول في النسك, there are three types of ansak, there are three types of rituals, or three cases. It's either that a person is going to be performing Umrah alone. So when you enter into the state of Ihram, this is the intention that you intend. Likewise, it's possible that a person is only going to perform Hajj alone. So you would say in that case, Allahumma labbaika hajjan. In the first case, Allahumma labbaika, Umrah. And there's a third case where you combine between Hajj and Umrah. Hajj and Umrah is combined. So here you'd say, Allahumma labbaika, Umratan wa Hajja. A lot of people, they think that entering into the state of Ihram is something which happens automatically when you cover yourself with those towels. The white towels that men wear. They think that once you put those clothing on, the clothing of Ihram, they refer to it as, that's it, you automatically entered into the state of Ihram. And this is not correct. What's correct is that Ihram is this intention that you make. So it's possible that some people, as some people do, they find it difficult to change inside the toilets while they're on the flights. So before boarding the plane at home, they enter into this, they wear these clothes, let's say. They wear these clothes at home. By them wearing these clothes, they have not entered into the state of Ihram automatically. It doesn't enter you into the state of Ihram automatically. So they wear these clothes prior to entering into the plane. But on the plane, on the flight, once the announcement goes off that we are about to cross the miqat, that's when they make the intention. That's when you make the intention to enter into the state of Ihram, and that's when you enter the state of Ihram. That's when you enter into the state of Ihram with that intention, not by wearing those clothes. And the reason why you have to wear those clothes is because once you enter into the state of Ihram, you're not allowed to wear fitted clothing. Fitted clothing is from the prohibitions which are prohibited upon the muhrim, which is why you have to, prior to enter into the state of Ihram, take off those clothes and wear clothing which are not fitted, which is the towels. In the case of men only, In the case of women, they can wear their usual clothing. The second pillar is al-wuqufu bi-Arafah, to remain at Arafah. Arafah is a name of a mountain which is located just outside of the Haram. It's not only the name of that mountain, but it's the land which is adjacent to it. And there's signs which indicate to you where Arafah is. Okay, this is the second pillar, remaining at Arafah. It has to be within the boundaries of Arafah. وهو ركن بالإجماع, and this is a pillar by consensus. ودليله قوله صلى الله عليه وسلم, and the evidence for this being a pillar is the statement of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, الحج عرفة. Hajj is Arafah. Scholars have taken from this the fact that the Prophet ﷺ confined the whole of Hajj to this one pillar shows the importance of this pillar. So some of them have said this is the most important pillar of Hajj because of the statement of the Prophet ﷺ. Similar to his statement when speaking about dua, he said, Ad-du'a huwa al-ibadah. Dua, supplication, this is ibadah. And we know that ibadah, worship, is general, includes supplication and other supplication. So the fact that he refined or confined it to dua shows the importance and the merit and virtue, excellence of dua. This hadith is reported by Tirmidhi, Abu Dawood and Nasa'i, and it's authenticated by Shaykh Albani. This hadith regarding Arafah. So this is the second pillar, remaining at Arafah. It has to be within the boundaries of Arafah. As for the timing for performing this act of worship, then وَوَقْتُ الْوُقُوفِ, remaining at Arafah, مِنْ بَعْدِ الزَّوَالِ يَوْمَ عَرَفَةِ, it has to be after Zawal. Zawal is once the sun has reached its zenith, just before Dhuhr time comes in, before Dhuhr, on the day of Arafah. The day of Arafah is the 9th. So on the 9th of Dhul Hijjah, from Zawal إلى طلوع فجر يوم النحر, until dawn break يوم النحر, which is the 10th. So from Zawal on the 9th until Fajr time on the 10th. This is the period where this act of worship or this pillar has to be fulfilled. If someone goes into Arafah during this period, at any point during this period, and he stands there even for a minute, then he has fulfilled the pillar. He has fulfilled the pillar. However, the scholars have mentioned that if a person enters into Arafah during the day, so after Zawal, then it's wajib for him to remain there until Maghrib. It's wajib for him. If he enters after Zawal, during the day after Zawal, he has to remain there until Maghrib. Even though if he left before Maghrib, he has still fulfilled the pillar. But it's wajib for him to remain until Maghrib. If he moves from Arafah, exits before Maghrib, before the sun sets, then he has gone against this mandatory act, so he has to sacrifice. He has to offer a sacrifice and expiate for it. But his Hajj is still valid because he's fulfilled the pillar. He's fulfilled the pillar, but he's missed the wajib. So there is a difference between pillar, rukn, and wajib. Pillar, if you miss it, there's no way of repaying it back. Your Hajj is null and void. But missing a wajib, you're sinful for it, but you can expiate. If you do it intentionally, you're sinful, but you can expiate by offering a ransom, and your Hajj is still valid. Your Hajj is still valid. So you've missed a pillar by moving from Arafah before sunset. However, if a person enters into Arafah after sunset, so after Maghrib, a person comes to Arafah, he was late and he did not make it during the day. Making it during the day, this is the best thing that a person should do. This is the sunnah. Coming during the day after Zawal and then staying there until Maghrib, this is according to the sunnah. This is the best thing that a person can do. However, someone's late and so on, and he comes after sunset, so after Maghrib, then what's wajib upon him is just to remain there for even a short period of time, like a minute or so. If he remains there for a minute and then he leaves, he's fulfilled the pillar, and there's no ransom upon him. He doesn't have to remain there until Fajr. There's no fidya, there's no expiation due upon him. I hope that's understood. If you come during the day, you have to remain until Maghrib. If you exit before Maghrib, you have to offer sacrifice. But if you come at night, after Maghrib, between Maghrib and Fajr, any time between Maghrib and Fajr, and you remain there, then you can leave, even if it's for a short period of time, and there's no ransom due upon you. That's the second pillar that has to be fulfilled, and that has to be done within this period of time, as we mentioned. The third pillar is Tawaf al-Ziyarah. Tawaf al-Ziyarah, performing the Tawaf, going around the Kaaba. This is something which is wajib. It has many names, this Tawaf. One of them is a Ziyarah. Ziyarah means visiting, so the Tawaf of visiting. The reason why it's called visiting is because you're coming from Mina. You would have come from Mina, so after Arafah, you go to Muzdalifah, and then after Muzdalifah, you go to Mina. Then you leave Mina to come to Mecca. And when you leave Mina to come to Mecca, you're not going to be staying at Mecca. So what are you doing? You're visiting Mecca. And during your visit, you're going to perform this Tawaf, which is why this is called Tawaf of visiting. Tawaf al-Ziyarah. You're going to perform this Tawaf, and you're also going to perform this Sa'i, the fourth pillar. ويسمى طواف الإفاضة, and it's also called طواف الإفاضة لأنه يكون بعد الإفاضة. And the reason why it's called طواف الإفاضة is because it's after returning من عرفة, coming back from Arafah. ويسمى طواف الفرض, and it's also called طواف الفرض, the obligatory طواف. وهو ركن بالإجماع. It's called the obligatory طواف because the طواف is obligatory and it's a pillar from the pillars of Hajj. وهو ركن بالإجماع, and it is a pillar by consensus. لقوله تعالى, due to Allah saying, ثم ليقضوا تفثهم, then let them groom themselves and perform the acts of cleansing. وَلْيُوفُوا نُذُورَهُمْ, and fulfill their vows. وَلْيَطَّوَّفُوا بِالْبَيْتِ الْعَتِيقِ, and perform tawaf around the sacred house. This is the shahid, this is the point of evidence. Allah commands to perform tawaf, and the scholars of tafsir, they've all agreed that the tawaf being referred to here is this tawaf, tawaf al-ifada. So this tawaf is wajib, it has to be performed. The start time is from midnight on the 9th, as some scholars have said, or the Fajr on the 10th, and it extends all the way till the end of Dhul Hijjah, as some of the scholars have mentioned. It extends all the way till the end of Dhul Hijjah. Shaykh Uthaymeen and others, they mentioned that if a person does not perform it within this time, then he has to offer a sacrifice. If Dhul Hijjah, the month of Dhul Hijjah is complete and you haven't performed this, then you have to offer a sacrifice. So there's an extended time to perform this tawaf. After this tawaf, we have the fourth and final pillar, which is as-sa'i bayna Safa al-Marwa, going between Safa and Marwa, two mountains in Mecca, within the Haram. You need to go between them 7 times. وَهُوَ رُكْنٌ, and this is also a pillar. لحديث عائشة رضي الله عنها, due to the saying of Aisha رضي الله عنها, ما أتم الله حج امرئ ولا عمرته لم يطف بين الصفا والمروة, that the Hajj and Umrah of a person who does not perform the going around between Safa and Marwa, the Hajj and the Umrah of this person is not complete in the sight of Allah. And this is the hadith reported by Muslim. وقوله صلى الله عليه وسلم, and the saying of the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, اسعوا فإن الله كتب عليكم السعي. Perform the sa'i, for Allah has enjoined it upon you, enjoined the sa'i upon you. Reported by Ahmad ibn Khuzaymah al-Bayhaqi, authenticated by Shaykh Albani. So sa'i between Safa and Marwa, this is the final pillar of Hajj. These things, inshallah, they're going to be explained in more detail, inshallah, when we speak about the descriptions of how to perform Hajj and Umrah. When we speak about how to perform Hajj and Umrah, inshallah, we're going to go into more detail and speak about the conditions for each of them, بإذن الله تعالى. وهذه الأركان لا يتم الحج إلا بها. And these pillars, Hajj is incomplete, the Hajj is incomplete and invalid without these pillars. فمن ترك ركنا, so whoever misses or leaves out a pillar from these pillars, لم يتم حجه, his Hajj is incomplete, حتى يأتي بها, until he performs it. Barakallah fikum. So we covered the 4 pillars in this lesson. Next lesson we're going to speak about the wajibat, the mandatory acts. And we said the difference between the pillars and the mandatory acts is pillars, if you leave it off, there's no expiation, your Hajj is invalid. Wajibat is, if you miss it, then there is expiation. There is expiation, and that is to offer sacrifice. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa ant, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.